search party trudges through waist-deep snow looking for 9 missing university students. They've been out here for days. The cold is the kind that makes your lungs ache just breathing it. The kind of cold where the world goes completely, utterly silent. They find the tent first. It's been cut open from the inside. Not torn, not collapsed. Cut from the inside, deliberately. Like whoever was in there needed to get out so fast that using the door wasn't an option. The hikers are gone. Their boots are still inside. Their coats are still inside. It is minus 30 degrees Celsius outside. What happened on that mountain has never been explained. Not really. Not in a way that makes sense. Welcome to Where the Light Dies. I'm going to tell you everything we know about the Dyatlov Pass incident, and then I'm going to tell you why that's somehow more terrifying than knowing nothing at all. Before we get to what happened to them, you need to know who they were. Because this isn't a story about reckless kids. These were experienced, capable, accomplished people. Igor Dyatlov was 23, an engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He'd led multiple expeditions before. He was the kind of person other people trusted their lives to, and did regularly. The group was 10 in total at the start. 9 would make it to the mountain. 7 men, 2 women, ages ranging from 20 to 38, most of them seasoned hikers and skiers. Their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain in the northern Urals, a grade 3 expedition, the highest difficulty category. Difficult, but achievable, the kind of trip they'd done before. They set off on January 23rd, 1959. They were expected back by February 12th. When they didn't return, nobody panicked immediately. Weather delays happen. Mountains are unpredictable. The search party wasn't organized until February 20th. By then, the mountain had already done whatever it was going to do. Here's something that makes this case uniquely haunting. The group kept diaries. They took photographs. We have their own words and images from the days leading up to whatever happened. They're normal, cheerful even. Photos of the group laughing in the snow, setting up camp, making faces at the camera. Diary entries about the cold, about the food, about jokes and songs around the fire. The mundane texture of a camping trip with friends. The last diary entry is dated February 1st. It's written by multiple members. It describes a difficult day's march, heavy winds, low visibility. At one point, they drifted off course and ended up on the slope of a mountain called Kolat Shakal, instead of making camp in the valley. In the local Mansi language, Kolat Shakal means dead mountain. They decided to camp on the slope rather than backtrack. It was late. They were tired. The decision made practical sense. They set up the tent. They made dinner. They went to sleep. That is the last normal moment in this story. The tent was found on February 26th. Partially buried in snow on the slope of Dead Mountain. It had been cut open from the inside. Multiple cuts, like someone had slashed their way out in a hurry. Inside, all 9 pairs of boots, all the coats, food, equipment, everything they needed to survive in minus 30 degrees, left behind. Footprints led away from the tent, downhill, toward the tree line about 1.5 miles away. The investigators could tell from the footprints that the group had been walking, not running. Calm, orderly, which in some ways is the most unsettling detail of all. Whatever made them leave the tent in the middle of the night, in the freezing cold, without boots or coats, it didn't make them panic. It made them walk. The first 2 bodies were found near the tree line. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, both frozen, both in their underwear, beneath a large cedar tree, its top branches broken, like someone had climbed it to look at something. Igor Dyatlov's body was found 300 meters back toward the tent, face up in the snow, one arm raised slightly, like he'd been trying to crawl back. Zina Kolmogorova was found nearby, same direction. Then Rustem Slobodin, closer to the tent than the others, a small crack in his skull, but not enough to kill him. All 5 had died of hypothermia. That's the simple part. The other 4 weren't found until May, when the snow melted. They were in a ravine, 75 meters from the cedar tree, under 4 meters of snow. And this is where the case stops being explainable. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had massive skull fractures, not surface damage, the kind of fractures caused by extreme force. Investigators compared it to a car crash. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had the same. Broken ribs on multiple sides, the kind of internal damage you'd expect from a significant fall or being struck by something with enormous force. No external wounds to explain any of it. No bruising on the skin, no cuts, as if the damage had come from inside or from a pressure so total it left no mark. And Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue and the soft tissue around her eyes. Removed, gone. The official report offered no explanation. Several of the bodies had clothing that tested slightly radioactive. The Soviet government classified the investigation shortly after. The files were sealed. The official verdict: the hikers died due to a, quote, compelling natural force. That was it. No elaboration, no specifics. A compelling natural force, which is either the most useless conclusion in the history of official investigations, or a very deliberate way of saying absolutely nothing at all. In the 65 years since the incident, a lot of people have tried to explain what happened on Dead Mountain. Some of those explanations are reasonable. Some are unsatisfying. Some are genuinely disturbing. Let's go through them. Theory 1. An avalanche. The most commonly cited explanation. An avalanche could explain the internal injuries. Being crushed under tons of snow could do that kind of damage without leaving external marks. It could explain why they cut their way out of the tent in a panic. It could explain a lot. The problem is, the slope angle was too shallow for a natural avalanche. There was no evidence of disturbed snow around the tent. The footprints leading away were calm and orderly, not the aftermath of people who'd just been partially buried. And the Soviet investigators themselves, who were on the mountain shortly after, didn't find avalanche evidence. A 2021 study used computer modeling to argue a small, unusual slab avalanche was possible. A lot of people found it convincing. A lot of people didn't. Theory 2. Infrasound. This one is genuinely interesting. Infrasound is low-frequency sound, below the range of human hearing, that can be produced by wind moving through certain mountain terrain. At certain frequencies, infrasound can cause intense anxiety, disorientation, a feeling of overwhelming dread, even hallucinations. The theory goes, the wind that night produced infrasound that made the group feel they were in immediate danger. Not from anything real, just from their own panicking nervous systems. It would explain why they left calmly. It would explain why they walked rather than ran. They were trying to get away from a feeling, not a thing. It doesn't explain the injuries. It doesn't explain the missing tongue. Theory 3. Soviet military testing. The radioactive clothing. The classified files. The sealed investigation. The vague official verdict. Some researchers believe the group stumbled into or were caught by a Soviet weapons test. Possibly a parachute mine. A type of weapon that detonates above ground and creates a pressure wave capable of causing massive internal injuries without external damage. It would explain the broken bones. It would explain the radiation. It would explain why the government shut everything down so quickly. It would not explain why the files have still never been fully released. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation briefly and concluded it was an avalanche. They did not address the injuries. They did not address the radiation. They closed it again. Make of that what you will. Theory 4. The Munsee people. The Munsee are the indigenous people of the region. Kholat Shakal, Dead Mountain, is considered sacred in their tradition. The Munsee were briefly investigated as suspects. There was no evidence connecting them to the deaths. The theory was quietly dropped. It's worth mentioning mostly because it's an example of how, when there's no good explanation, the investigation starts reaching. Theory 5. The thing nobody wants to say out loud. There are details in this case that don't fit any conventional explanation. The nature of the injuries, the missing soft tissue, the radiation, the way the bodies were positioned, the sealed files, the vague official conclusion. There is a segment of researchers, serious ones, not the fringe, who believe the full truth of what happened on Dead Mountain has never been made public, that whatever the Soviet government knew, they chose not to say, that the compelling natural force they referred to was something they understood, but couldn't or wouldn't explain. We don't know what that something was. We may never know. I want to step back from the specifics for a moment, because I think the reason this case refuses to die, the reason it's been discussed, debated, and obsessed over for 65 years, isn't really about the theories. It's about what the case represents. 9 experienced, capable, rational people in a situation they understood, with equipment and training, made a decision, a calm, orderly, deliberate decision, to leave everything that would keep them alive and walk out into the dark. And whatever drove them to that decision has never been identified. That's the thing about the Dyatlov Pass incident that lives in you after you learn about it. Not the injuries, not the missing tongue, not even the radiation. It's the footprints. 9 sets of footprints, walking calmly downhill in the dark, in the cold, without boots. Like people who had accepted something. Like people who already knew it didn't matter which way they went. The universe is not hostile. It's indifferent. Things happen not because something wants to harm you, but because forces exist that don't register your presence at all. Whatever happened on Dead Mountain that night, whether it was physics or government weapons, or something the Soviet state decided the world shouldn't know about, It didn't care about Igor Dyatlov. It didn't care about Lyudmila Dubinina, who was 20 years old and had her whole life ahead of her. It didn't care about any of them. They were just 9 people in the wrong place at the wrong time, on a mountain that had been there for millions of years and would be there for millions more. That's not a monster. That's something worse. That's just how things are. Yuri Yudin, the one who turned back, visited the site in 2008, almost 50 years after his friends died there. He stood at the memorial. He said he still had no idea what happened. He said it was easier, in some ways, not knowing, because every explanation he'd ever heard felt wrong. He died in 2013. The case is still officially open in Russia. The mountain is still there. People still hike to it. There's a marked trail now, a memorial plaque. Some go out of curiosity. Some go hoping the place will tell them something the files never did. It doesn't, as far as anyone can tell. It's just a mountain, cold and quiet and indifferent, the way mountains are. 9 people walked out of a tent one night in February 1959 and never came back. We still don't know why, and I think, if I'm honest, part of us doesn't want to.